Sunday morning, you know what's coming, right? Because many of you have been in a congregation where there are many members. The next day, I pulled that table out, and the next Sunday, a woman with an angry expression on her face pointed to the empty spot and said, "Who moved the table?" With some trepidation, I said, "I did." She said, "That table was given to us by our founder when this place was built. It has always been there. You have no right to move our stuff." Although my first response was to go, and this is what we always do when somebody comes at us, right? How dare you do that? And I'm learning in my elder years to hold my hands like this. They might first go up and then I'm like this. So I said I had no idea about the history of the table. However, I was concerned that more people are coming to our congregation, and I was concerned about the toddler who was crawling around this table. That could be very dangerous with the glass inside the table. "Is there another way," I said, "to honor the founder's memory?" The woman said, "Well, it won't be the same. I liked it right there." I hear hints of myself. I liked it right there. I said, "I understand." There was a moment of quiet silence. So hard for us to do, isn't it? To allow a moment of silence for people to process their feelings. She said, "I guess if it means we can become more welcoming to people, to be a safer place, I can get used to the change." The next week, there was a plaque, within 2 weeks, there was a plaque on the wall above the spot where the table used to be that said, "We are grateful for the love of our founders. They are," and all the names were listed there. Here are 2 observations. First, I noticed the person was angry. Although my first and easiest reaction was to become angry back, I paused to find out what was behind that person's reaction. As in this case, it wasn't about me or the table, the stuff. It was about her memory. The logical answer was that it posed danger to people of all ages, and it should be removed, but then we had to address the attachment to a memory. Secondly, although clearly tradition and past was on the person's mind, tradition and the past was on her mind, time passes. Things change. Thank goodness. Consider this. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition is called a living tradition because we agree that we are part of a faith tradition that will and must change. Unlike other faith traditions that tend to remain fixed on antiquated decrees such as, maybe you saw in the news this week, some traditions won't allow ministers to become ordained. Some don't let anybody in the LGBTQ plus community to become ordained leaders. We Unitarian Universalists, however, believe in finding new ways to become radically inclusive. We're not having those fights anymore. We refuse to be stuck in the past. We seek to understand that stuff is worthy of remaining permanent in our tradition, and stuff, some of it, is transient, less fixed. Unitarian clergyman Theodore Parker gave a sermon at the ordination of Reverend Charles Shackford in Boston in 1841. It was titled, "The Transient and Permanent in Christianity." If you do any Unitarian Universalist history search, Theodore Parker is one of the big ones. Profound influencers in our tradition. Parker's focus in his ministry was on biblical criticism, which is the kind of Bible study we Unitarian Universalists do when we turn to biblical scripture. We read the Bible critically, not in a demeaning way. That's not what I mean about critically. It means that we consider the scripture in a manner that recalls the historical, the critical, and the scientific knowledge of the times when it was written. But we don't take the scripture at face value. However, the Unitarianism of Parker's days was, on the whole, not like that at all. His contemporaries were far more conservative, and they did take biblical passages in a literal way. In his sermon on May 19th, Reverend Theodore Parker argued that some things are fixed in religion, especially Christianity, and some things are not. In his 17-page thesis or sermon, over and over he explained, quote, "It must be confessed, though with sorrow, that transient things form a great part of what is commonly taught as religion. An undue place has often been assigned to forms and doctrines, while too little stress has been laid on the divine life of the soul, life to God and love to man at the time, I'll be inclusive, and love to one another's neighbors." He continued, "But through all this, the words of Christianity have come down to us from the lips of the Hebrew youth, gentle and beautiful as the light of a star, not spent by the journey through time and space. So the Christianity of Jesus is permanent, though what passes for Christianity with popes and catechisms, with sects and churches in the 1st century or the 19th century proved transient also. The stream of Christianity, as men receive it, as people receive it, has caught a stain from every soil it has filtered through, so that now it is not the pure water from the well of life, which is offered to our lips, but streams troubled and polluted by man with mire and dirt, by persons through history. What you are hearing in these quotes from Parker is the influence of transcendentalists. Most importantly, his friendship with Ralph Waldo Emerson, also a Unitarian. Emerson was a public proponent of the idea of transcendentalism. This is the idea that all persons doesn't have to be just a priest who has access to the sacred, not just prophets of the past that reframed early on how our ancestors think about faith, and especially Christianity. It surpasses past-oriented faith to present-oriented, and I'll even say where we are right now, future-oriented faith tradition. Our tradition is not about the historical revelation preserved in a holy book and passed down generation after generation. It is about our appreciation of diverse thought, residing within and amongst the friends and members of diverse spiritual understandings, of diverse spiritual identities, who make up our UU communities, the nearly 1,100 UU communities across the world. My colleague, Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Lewis Connolly, wrote, quote, "The closest the Unitarian Church has ever come to conducting a heresy trial took place a year after the sermon that Theodore Parker preached. They sat him down, and there was a friendly chat to see where the young Theodore Parker had gone so terribly wrong. The conclusion of the meeting was a recommendation that Theodore Parker resign immediately. Of course, he refused to do that. Instead, he stated his position all the more clearly and all the more publicly. The original message of Jesus is that we love one another." He stuck to that, and all of these other doctrines, all of these other scriptures are mired in change through history. And despite, let's go back to the quote, despite the great opposition against him, as a commentator said, "Of course I disagree with him entirely, but we are a non-creedal church, are we not? And so we must surely allow him to stay." The irony is, of course, that the Christianity of Theodore Parker, that we love one another, that we love God, however we understand God, is still alive in our Unitarian Universalist denomination today, whereas the conservative Bible-based form of Unitarianism of his peers, that's entirely dead in our Unitarian Universalist meeting houses. Parker moved the stuff, the theological stuff, thankfully. But it's important to pause to ask ourselves what is permanent in our Unitarian Universalist community and what is transient. What is most important here? What is important about the little Oreo cookie that we receive when we arrive here? Is it that it remain fixed on a napkin, or is that it arrives on a stick, or that it arrives around one's neck, that it looks different than it does week from week? So when I agreed to join you here in September, I recall that there was and is currently a set of goals, developmental goals, that we all agreed to work on here at UUC. UUC.org, you will find, as devoted as we are to our principles and honoring each other, we do recognize that as humans, we are perfectly imperfect. As we honor our human nature, we strive to do better. To that end, we have devised some developmental goals. Just as a reminder, if many of you have forgotten, creating a culture of mutual trust between the congregation, lay leadership, staff, and minister. Strengthening our ability to have healthy disagreements that deepen relationships. Moving from an I church or to a we church, balancing individual needs with beloved community. Creating a congregation of encompassing hospitality, prompting multifaceted growth. This morning, my message addresses very specifically this third goal. Moving from an I church, community or congregation, to a we church, community or congregation. Note my inclusive language here. UUC is personally a church for some, a congregation for others, and some like me, we view our UU gathering place as a faith community. Nevertheless, I'm hearing a few people grumble about stuff being moved here at UUC. Not material stuff, but traditional ways of doing things. Here's an example. In July, on the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th, we will be Zoom only. Here is a video prepared by our past president, Margie Manning, to explain to you a little more.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater. In fact, let's go beyond welcome to create a congregation of encompassing hospitality. I'm Margie Manning. I'm past president of our Board of Trustees, and this summer I'll be leading a discussion of the book Beyond Welcome. It's a collection of short essays that explores what it means to be in the beloved community and how we can get there. These conversations with each other about these essays will take place over 4 Sundays in July. We'll be talking on July 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and on Zoom only so that our summer travelers can also attend. Now, there won't be any traditional worship services on these Sundays. This is a different way of talking about that which has worth. The book Beyond Welcome is available from the Unitarian Universalist Association bookstore at uabookstore.org. And for Kindle readers, it's also available on Amazon. Check out the weekly e-octagram and our UC website to prepare for each week's discussion, and so that we can all grow our understanding of what it means to welcome our members and guests to UC. Thanks.
Might we pause to consider why this approach to Sunday gatherings beginning the second Sunday in July might be a welcome idea? I know the first response is, what? That's not how we do it here. You're moving stuff. For one, this lovely building needs to be cleaned. These seats that you're sitting on, I found dried dead moths. I'm like, I don't know when the last time these seats have been cleaned. The floors in this building need attention. Susan Strauss is eager to clean this building, and we can't do it if we keep meeting in here. Thank you for agreeing to do something different here. Now, here's the other thing. Part of the reason is because people get older. People get older and can't do a lot of the things such as worship associate or preparing stuff online. But here's the thing, people are older, but many people are active. And so they have other priorities. They want to see their family up north, or they want to do things, kayaking on a Sunday morning. Finally, shouldn't some of the few who volunteer, and it's a few, it's not what it used to be, shouldn't those few have a little vacation? Shouldn't they too get a break? For the newcomers, I don't know, if you're talking to a friend, they say, well, where do you go on a Sunday morning? You go, well, we started going to Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater. And they say, well, what do they do there? And you go, oh, well, we're doing a book discussion for 4 Sundays in July. They're like, what? Yeah, we believe in doing things differently, but still meaningfully. So here's the other thing. Consider the wow, and this is the part you can say, we heard a personal story, we heard a little history about Unitarian Universalism, and here is your take home. Consider this acronym, WOW. Ask, in the midst of change, even change in our community, or changes at home, or changes in relationship, or changes in what we're seeing in the world, ask ourselves, who will be fed? It's WOW, W. Who will be fed by this change? Who will be fed by having a deep discussion about Beyond Welcome? Who will be fed who will be at home and can't get out of the house and come here and miss what goes on here? They too will be part of this discussion and feel that they're part of the group. I want it a certain way. I say this. I want it a certain way, but if I consider others, if I make a change on behalf of the safety and well-being of others, I can do this. All right, O. So W, O, ask. Am I open to change? Can I be flexible, or am I giving in to the easy influence of being rigid? So remember, the easy impulse is shock and denial, and I'm not doing it. Because that's easy, it's right, accessible. The hard one is, how might I be flexible and say, well, we can try this. Am I open to change? The third one is, what is the gift in the change? What is the gift? Regarding the 4 Sundays, when it's Zoom only, who wouldn't want to attend a Sunday service or a book discussion in their jammies with a cup of coffee and a Danish? Come on, you don't want to attend a coffee. This won't be forever for those of you who are still grumbling. We miss each other. I will. Face to face, we miss each other. I know that. So on August the 6th, we're still meeting next week. We're still meeting that first weekend in July for potluck. Stay after service for potluck. Celebrate with one another. You can still call somebody and go to lunch. It's just an alternative format on 4 Sunday mornings. Thank you for your flexibility. I want to end this sermon with a final disclosure. Regarding the story, the one at the beginning of this sermon about the first fight I had with my spouse 18 years ago, if we remain in relationship, that means here too, if we remain in relationship, if we find the gift in being in relationship that is honorable, kind, respectful, loving, and filled with gratitude and, flexibility, especially regarding how things need to be moved, we might receive a wonderful, unexpected gift. Check out this blue toolbox that Santa brought me this year for Christmas. The stuff is in this little blue box, and it's all, I can hold them. They're not so heavy also. 18 years in the relationship, I got my toolbox back with the love and support of my spouse. Thank you, Phil. May you too, after relationship in this community, find gifts. In all things, may we seek love, gratitude, and a sense of wow, asking who will be fed. Can I be open to trying new things? What is the gift in this change? And may it be so.